Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. And first up, I will remind you, join the mailing list. Head over to CanadaReport.co or CanadaPoly.com and join the mailing list on either of those websites. I send out a weekly newsletter, and I will get to the weekly newsletter this week. And if YouTube cuts me off for whatever reason, I will give updates via email. So that's what you're signing up for. So the newsletters, I think, are valuable just for encapsulating the big changes of the week. I'm hopefully going to get one out today. I was going to get it out yesterday. I had it kind of roughly mapped out, and then, I got busy. So these things happen. That's all right. Also, join the forum. I don't have a lot to do with the general category. I seed the federal politics category. I just put my podcast on there every day, and then people talk about that. So I don't have a lot to do with making other conversation topics in the general forum, but there's great conversation that happens on CanadaPoly.com on the forums, and people are talking about the Greyhound suspending all bus routes. We'll talk about that today. They're talking about the lack of freedom of speech or the turning of the conversation on other forms, form sliding or whatever, if you want to talk about X, taking the conversation to Y, right? That's form sliding. And so somebody's here looking for a conversation and a conversation that is not moderated that way, or maybe not slid that way. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of people very interested in chatting about what's actually going on in our country. So I've heard a lot of people saying they feel alone. They feel like they're the only one. And there are a lot of people who are feeling like that, feeling isolated, right? Especially because of what's going on. And we'll talk about extension of the lockdowns further. But you don't have to feel that way necessarily. There are places where you can have those conversations. It does exist. So, and Canada Poly is one of those places. So that's why I built it. So there you go. And let's move into the news. That was far too long an intro. I apologize. Anyway, Trudeau skates and Morneau is skewered. Did Dion get it right on we? So the ethics commission, the ex-ethics commissioner Mario Dion came back with his recommendations and his ruling, and it says Prime Minister Trudeau cleared of ethics violations in the we scandal, but Morneau broke ethics laws over the we charity contract. So he'll get some kind of fine, I guess. Ethics Commissioner Mario Dion has ruled that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau did not breach the Conflict of Interest Act in relation to his involvement in granting We Charity a federal contract, but former Finance Minister Bill Morneau placed himself in a conflict of interest on several occasions. Good thing he's out of cabinet now, eh? And out of caucus, right? He's off as a private citizen now. The Ethics Commissioner said in his report released Thursday that Morneau, who left cabinet and resigned as a MP in the face of this controversy last summer, breached various sections of the act by improperly furthering we's private interest by failing to recuse himself from decisions related to we and by giving we preferential treatment. Interesting. But Justin Trudeau did nothing wrong, and gosh darn it, if only Scott Bryson hadn't resigned, eh? Here's Michael Chong. We're going to get into talking about China. This is a 3-minute interaction. I'll just show you the last little bit here. Patty Haydu is responding to Mr. Chong's first question, which is basically, we have Chinese nationals working in this bio research lab sending samples back to mainland China. And why don't we know anything about this? And Patty Haydu says they did wonderful work. And now it's private and they no longer work for Canada, so I can't comment on it. And then Chong follows up with basically a restatement of his question again. And so I only want to show you this part because we don't need to repeat, and it's a long clip. So here we go.
That we have. I will say that I can't comment on this matter due to privacy obligations. These people are no longer with the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Well, member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, we live in a democracy where transparent and open government is incredibly important, something that this government is not upholding. We know that secret clearance requires senior level approval. We know that CSIS raised national security concerns about Dr. Chu, Dr. Cheng, and the Chinese students at the government's lab in Winnipeg, as the Globe and Mail has reported. Mr. Speaker, with all that we know about China's communist leadership, how were these individuals given secret clearance at the government's Level 4 lab where the world's most dangerous viruses are handled?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I will just repeat, the National Microbiology Lab is a Canadian treasure and has been providing incredible research and laboratory support to Canadians and Canadian organizations around the country during the pandemic. And I will also remind the member opposite that these individuals are no longer with the Public Health Agency.
So he asked, how could these people, these Chinese nationals, gain access to this level 4 lab that researches the most infectious diseases? And she says, not anything to do with the questions. They were great. They were wonderful to work with. Our labs are wonderful. Thanks for the question. Next question. The Liberals don't answer questions they don't like. So it's a well-asked question of Mr. Chong. And Patty Haydu is well over her head. She is not capable of the job that she is tasked with. She is not capable of doing it. And yet she still continues. Like, we've had a year of pandemic. A year ago, somebody said, should we stop flights from China? Because it seems like China's an infected ground zero area, and just landing a whole bunch of people every day in Toronto and letting them go into the population seems like a really bad idea. And that was called racist. Like, this person should not be in her cabinet position, and yet she still is. Same with, there are 4 cabinet ministers, right? Guilbeault, Bill Blair, Miss Haydu, and Justin Trudeau? Chrystia Freeland? I mean, I guess you could throw a rock and hit a Liberal minister that should not be in their cabinet, right? But here we are, and what are we going to do with it? So it's terrible, but incompetence reigns in our government, and we get to deal with the fallout of that. Here is the Globe and Mail running cover for this. It says, in many countries, including Canada, like, the Globe and Mail is a Canadian newspaper generally. I mean, I guess it's a national newspaper, but I guess most people in the United States are not reading the Globe and Mail. So people aren't, I think it's a Canadian newspaper. And so it should focus on how Canadians feel about things. But instead of focusing on how Canadians feel about things, it spreads it around. Don't worry, Canada, you're not alone. In many countries, including Canada, dissatisfaction with government pandemic response is growing. Dissatisfaction, I think that's a little bit like understating it, right? Like, it's just shy of dissatisfaction. Like, I think it's outright hatred of the people who are implementing this. People have serious questions. We have professional bodies that have challenged the government to public debates. We have professional bodies of doctors that are silencing the doctors and then walking back statements. Don't worry, Canada. There's a lot of people in a lot of different countries that have concerns. It's not just you. Yeah, but you know what, guys? These concerns are not just shared by the grumbling public. These concerns are shared by professional bodies. These concerns are shared by people who are informed on the topic, right? Dr. Bridle, I believe, Dr. Bridle from the University of Guelph is one, and there's 7 other people who've publicly declared that what's happening is absolutely should be debated vigorously and publicly. And they've challenged the government. And the government has responded by extending the lockdown. We'll talk about that in a minute. But isn't that incredible? The Globe and Mail, the reason for this is, listen, it's just an example of a nudge, but this is a psychological trick that is well known. So if you have a mail drop, right? Like if you have a target neighborhood and you have a mail drop, and the idea of the mail drop, you're going to spend money to get money back. So for every $1 you spend back, you get $5 back. Because the people have done what you've asked them to do in the mailer. And let's say this mailer asks people to file their taxes by April 30th. If you say, don't forget to file your taxes by April 30th on the mailer, then the mailer costs more money than it actually makes because people just ignore that. But if on the mailer you instead say, your neighbors filed their taxes already and the date and the deadline is April 30th, it's a groupthink thing. So you fall in line with that. You do what's expected. So that's what is happening here, right? It is, instead of us being the victims of this and professional bodies stepping up instead of the newspaper validating the concerns that the general public has for any issue, Instead of doing that, instead of dealing with this head on, instead of saying, yeah, Patty Haydu has maybe failed multiple times in the last year, and maybe a competent government and a competent leader, competent prime minister would maybe review the health minister in light of all the failings of this entire rollout of this response. But instead, they say, don't worry, Canadians, don't worry. This is normal. Other countries feel like this, so don't worry about it, right? It's managing. It's using a psychological trick to manage Canadians' expectations and to make you think that what's happening is normal. This is anything but normal. This is not normal. Very abnormal, okay? This is not how... If this happened in the 90s, there would be... I'm sure the government would fall. I'm sure there would be some alliance of people, both provincially and federally, I think. There would be some kind of alliance that would be hammered out to just bring the government down and not start again. But I'm sure they wouldn't be able to get away with this. And I don't know how we're able to get away with this, but I think it's 2 weeks at a time. It's just 2 more weeks, everybody. It's just 2 more weeks. Do you still believe it's just 2 more weeks? Just 2 more weeks. Just until June 2nd. Just until June 2nd. Just keep believing us, okay? So this is management. That's what the Globe and Mail's job is here, and that's what they're doing, okay? That was a long way to get there. I apologize. Elections. The Liberals won an election. The Liberals have a de facto majority because the Greens and the NDP are on board. And so are the Bloc Québécois. The Bloc Québécois are willing to deal. How's that? On board is willing to deal, okay? And so federally, you've got 2 dance partners to get the Liberals over the 177, 180 that they need, 179, whatever it is, that they need to pass whatever piece of garbage legislation that they want to pass. The Liberals don't want to seem like they're the ones triggering the election because that would be not responsible. So they're trying to sell that it's not them triggering the election, that it's somebody else triggering the election, that it's not them that are doing this. They're being made to do this. Why are you forcing us to do this? Just let us spend money. You're making us go to this election to make sure that we can spend money with no oversight because it's such an emergency. That's the play. But they don't want the responsibility of actually calling the election. So they're trying to goad somebody else into doing it. Maybe that's what C10's about. Maybe that's what the awful budget was about, right? It's not us. It's these conservatives who don't believe in our election, right? Or our plan to fix the economy or whatever, which isn't the plan just extending all of the spending that we're doing to support small businesses, and that doesn't actually work anyway because there's a whole bunch of small businesses that are just failing because Costco and Walmart can operate as usual, right? And churches, right? Anyway, back to this. Mark Gerritsen, who's a Liberal MP, and he's been widely panned, I believe. Like, he's been widely criticized for incoherent speeches in the House of Commons or contradictory speeches in the House of Commons, whatever. But he says, today we asked the Bloc Québécois whether they would make every effort to avoid a pandemic election, and they refused, unsurprising, after they voted in favor of an election during the 3rd wave, but still disappointing. So it's not us, it's them. So, but no election has been called yet. But these are test balloons. How do people respond to having an election now, right? I don't know. Tim is a Nova Scotia, not Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, columnist and newspaper owner maybe. And he says, starting tomorrow, permanent Nova Scotia residents and people traveling for essential reasons must apply to enter the province. Travel restrictions, much stricter travel restrictions than were in place previously. You cannot drive across Canada now. You can't fly into Nova Scotia unless you have permission, I guess, right? According to this guy. And that's wild. Editor of Halifax Examiner. See his OnlyFans. That's a good joke. I like that. Greyhound Canada has permanently cutting all its remaining bus routes within the country. Its American affiliate, Greyhound Lines Incorporated, will continue to operate cross-border routes to Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver once the border reopens. More, Greyhound shutting down all bus service in Canada permanently. Greyhound bus is done. Anybody want a bus? Because you can buy them for cheap, right? They'll be turned into motorhomes. They'll be turned into like high-end motorhomes or whatever. But now would be a good time to start planning your cross-Canada bus service once things open up again, if things ever open up again. See, the thing is, when you do things incrementally like this looks like a business failure because of the pandemic. But is that what this is? It's the same with the airlines, right? Part of the Agenda 2030 is to limit the travel for the general public. And I looked at that and I thought, how would they get there? How would they possibly convince these companies to shut down these lucrative routes, like to save the environment? Could you say, listen, Greyhound, like here's this chart here and it says that your business, we can't do this anymore? No, right? So how would you get them to shut down? Wrong side, right? Maybe. Who knows, right? Maybe it's just all a coincidence. Maybe the data... I'll not get into it. I'm not on the redacted show yet. Okay. French language. Quebec seeks to change Canadian constitution, make sweeping changes to language laws with new bill. Yeah, well, do I think that's going to fly? I think Trudeau is willing to get something if he gives something, right? Willing to, if he thinks that instead of going to an election, he wants to just carry on with what he's got. Maybe they vote yes for the budget and Trudeau supports this language law, right? And the reality is the language laws changed the face of Canadian politics, changed the face of Ottawa politics. So there's a lot that goes into that. So I could see somebody using it to their advantage, right? Politics is messy, messy business. Schools. Anthony Furey says, Doug Ford just said Ontario teachers' unions are considering legal injunctions to force schools to stay closed for the rest of the school year. Interesting. This is in Ontario. Harvey Bishop says, and Harvey Bishop is the president of the OSSTF and FEESO. And he says, Premier Ford said today that education unions are seeking injunctions to keep schools from reopening. We've made no such threat, no legal action pending, and have not heard from the government since the move to remote learning. More absurd rhetoric from the Premier. So, which is it? It's hard to tell. This doesn't make the elementary. This is ETFO educators. It's not blue check marked. But they said, let's be perfectly clear, ETFO's position is and always has been that in-person Ontario education is the best and most equitable learning for all students. Educators want to be in schools and for school to be safe for students, educators, and all staff. Don't believe Ford's fiction. So there's a whole lot of people who are saying that Ford's lying, but this parent gets it right. He or she says, hiding behind safetyism, parents see what you're doing. All over the world, schools are opening safely, even in places where the kids aren't treated like prisoners. In the UK, there's no mask mandates anymore because the parents demanded that the masks be taken off the kids in the school. So anyway, back to this. In Ontario, it's never enough for ETFOs, ventilation bad, classes too big, etc. So you demand they close. I'll tell you as well, somebody made a point talking in one of the groups that I'm talking about, or that I chat in regularly. They said, listen, and I've been to England, and I can confirm this is true. In England, they don't have HVAC systems. They have radiator heat, like water heat, or another system, electric, like central fireplace or electric heat, rather than forced air gas, HVAC. So they don't have ventilation per se. We have much different ventilation system, internal heating system, than the UK. And I think that it's interesting that the UK kids are safe to go back to school with no ventilation, I suppose, with those types of heating systems. And in Canada, we have ventilation systems because we have a cold country, right? And we need to heat buildings for like long periods of time. In like a very cold country, right? Like minus 20 is nothing to sneeze at, man. And so we have a different heating system. So it's very interesting to make those comparisons, right? Anyway, we've got schools that are open in other places, even in other places across Canada. Even in Quebec, like just across the border, kids are going to school, kids are going to dance. Ontario has been locked down for a very long time. It's very punishing, very punishing. Sean Hammond, and this guy says, he's the ETFO president, and he's talking back to Anthony Furey. Anthony Furey says, the below is what I'm talking about regarding how teachers' union misinformation has damaged society. There was close to zero in-class transmission in Ontario prior to closures, but unions encouraged people to believe otherwise and that schools were somehow unsafe. And then this guy, Sam Hammond, says, I'm assuming you have the hard data to back up your statement that there was close to zero in-class transmission in Ontario. If you do, you should share it with the medical experts and the public. That data is public. It's on the Ontario dashboard. Like, this guy doesn't sound very well informed, which is kind of disappointing considering the position that he's in, right? Very interesting stuff. Aaron O'Toole, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole was questioned on a tweet from the party's account. He said it was a distraction from serious issues. And this is I saw the picture of this, the one dose summer thing. And I guess they removed this tweet, but I thought it was a bad tweet. And as typical with the Conservatives' messaging, it's bad messaging. So there's a lot better they could do. But what's going on is it's shadowboxing. Again, shadowboxing. Like Trudeau said something about a one-dose summer. And so the Conservatives are trying to make political hate of that. And there's a lot more going on. But O'Toole is laser focused on C10, like speech laws, which is something to fight over, yes, but it's not the only thing to fight over, and it's not even the most important thing in the Canadian electorate right now. I mean, in fact, you have to educate people to tell them what's happening in order to get them up to speed on that. Like, the thing that people are talking about is lockdowns, right? And the constitutionality of all of that, and the fact that nobody's had any kind of test in court or anything like that. And the Conservative Party has been completely silent about it. Like, the important things, completely silent, right? What happened the other day where Bernier, hold on, let me remember. The arrest of Pastor Pawlowski. Bernier weighed in on it as a Canadian leader at a federal level, weighed in on it, and O'Toole ignored it. Like, you would think that the Conservative leader would weigh in on that, right? Like, so there are things that are more important that are in the Canadian zeitgeist that the leadership, specifically Aaron O'Toole, is ignoring in order to focus on other things. And the other things that he's focusing on, or allowing his party to focus on, is inappropriate tweets, right? And it seems weird, right? It seems like, okay, Trump's not allowed to be a mean tweeting guy, and then, like, you guys are, right? And I guess the media is not really letting them get away with that. But at the same time, O'Toole is not really offering much to his base at all. And he hasn't been, right? Rex Murphy says, Canada's in crisis. Aaron O'Toole, where are you? He's focused on Bill C-10. That's it. How it started for Jason Kenney. Jason Kenney's got a game and he's going to get kicked out of caucus. He may take the UPC down with him. I think that may be the goal, right? Fracture it to a point where it's not viable, half viable, right? And you split the Conservative vote, because I think what will happen is well, it depends on what happens next. So how it started, dissent from within the United Conservative Party has reached new heights with a call from within caucus for Premier Jason Kenney to resign. The UPC caucus chair quits, calls for removal of Premier Kenney. Okay, so then. Drew Barnes and Todd Loewen expelled from the UPC caucus. Oh, it was supposed to go in stages. Voting is underway on motion to expel Todd Loewen and Drew Barnes from the UPC caucus. Stay tuned for live results. And they got expelled. Sorry, there was like a couple of different tweet threads that went through this, and I guess I thought I had it lined up properly, but I didn't. But anyway, the evolution of this, from Kenney being told and a person in a position of power resigning their position of power to send a message to Jason Kenney to say, like, what you're doing is not democratic, it's not right, we don't agree with it, as people in power, we don't agree with it. So he took the opportunity to put somebody in power who agreed with him, said the vote was going to be open, and it would be a text from the caucus members, and I also read that it was going to be a whipped vote. And when that happens, like, it looks like Kenney's just going to double down. He's just going to keep ruling with an iron fist, just like Doug Ford. Anybody who speaks out against what Doug Ford is doing is removed from the caucus. See Randy Hillier, Roman Baber, Belinda Carriolis. So that sends a message to anybody else who disagrees, like, you keep your disagreements to yourself, and things can continue as they are. And if you disagree, then you lose your job, because the PC caucus will remove you, and then you won't have the resources of the PCs for the next election. And that usually means no re-election, right? So that's what all of that is. So if Barnes and Loewen join the Wild Rose, then that could be a very interesting fractured or a very interesting united actual Conservative Party with somebody who's not Jason Kenney as the leader. but that will require an election. And I don't know when Alberta's next election is scheduled for. And I don't know if, I mean, the UPC had a very big majority, but things are obviously shifting in Alberta and very quickly. So we'll see how things play out, right? I don't know how things are going to play out. It's going to be very interesting. Closing arguments are underway in the constitutional challenge over Manitoba's public health orders. So this has been litigated by the Justice Centre. And hold on, I'll have more information in a second. A Manitoba judge is hearing closing arguments in the constitutional court case brought forward by a group of 7 churches and 3 individuals challenging the province's public health orders. The applicants argue measures to contain the spread of COVID-19 implemented between November 2020 and the present day infringe on charter rights to hold religious and public gatherings. There's a darkness choking our society, Alison Pejovic, excuse me if I got that wrong, a lawyer for the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, argued on behalf of the applicants. Pejovic told the court that the applicants have not come to court to deny the existence of COVID-19 or deny it has serious outcomes. They have come here armed with the science, seeking truth and justice, Pejovic argued. She told Manitoba Court of Queen's Bench Chief Justice Glenn Joyal, churches have been forced to close their doors while film productions have been allowed, buses continues to run, and liquor stores have stayed open. Pejovic argued that the charter is not simply being trampled, it is on fire. She pointed to Tobias Tisson, a church member near Steinbeck, and one of the applicants threatened with jail for holding a drive-in church service. We are asking the court to push back against the public health orders, Pejovic told Joyal. They will never stop unless our judiciary puts a stop to them. She argued that the orders are too broad and arbitrary because they lack connection with their purpose to prevent serious outcomes and death. We're not disputing that the hospitals were stressed, Pejovic told the court. She argued that there's little evidence before the court regarding outdoor transmission, yet they've banned outdoor gatherings. It's quite incredible, actually, Pejovic told Joyal. Dr. Roussin ought to show the public science before he makes these orders. Under Pejovic's current orders, gatherings on private property are restricted and indoor community, religious, and cultural gatherings have been prohibited. Restaurants are limited to serving takeout and delivery, and gyms and fitness centers have been forced to close. Retail stores have been reduced to 10% capacity or a maximum of 100 people. Outdoor gatherings in public are limited to 5 people. Chief Justice Joyal said in court it is an important case. I think there are issues that are deserving of attention, he told Pejovic during her arguments. Whether I agree or not is a different question, but that's from my analysis. Justice Centre lawyer Jay Cameron told the court earlier bans on drive-in worship services singled out churches. He argued people were allowed to sit in their vehicles in a Walmart and Costco, and that the only thing that made worship services illegal is that they were occurring in a church parking lot. Yeah, very, very wild. So, and I know there are other constitutional challenges or other challenges dealing with specific medical officers of health, etc., that are coming up, although it seems to have taken absolutely forever. So, I mean, we should have some idea one way or the other, or maybe it just goes to the Supreme Court, because if it comes back with a negative, I mean, it may go to appeal anyway. Either outcome, it may go to appeal. So, we'll see. We'll see how things work out. I'm not sure. We'll stay YouTube to finish this. Extended lockdowns. I was talking about this before. They have, Doug Ford has announced extended lockdowns. Brian Lilly says at 12:15, the Ford government will announce that the stay-at-home order is extended and will expire on June 3rd. According to multiple sources, the proposal to Cabinet was to extend the order for 4 weeks, but Cabinet rejected that idea and agreed to 2 weeks. Oh, yes, the Cabinet is standing strong for you. We won't extend it another month. People won't call for, or won't deal with that, but 2 more weeks they'll comply with, right? Do you think so? Doug Ford says Ontario is extending the stay-at-home order until at least June 2nd. This was a difficult but necessary decision to control the third wave and safeguard health system capacity while we continue to quickly vaccinate more Ontarians. Learn more. The ratio on this tweet is big. It was bigger earlier, so I don't know. The metrics are interesting, but it's got 1.9 thousand, 1,900 comments and 739 likes. So that usually indicates people disagreeing. Doug Ford is, that's just an article talking about the stay-at-home order. Here is Kelly Brown, and he says, today Doug Ford will likely reiterate he is following the advice of his science table advisors during his announcement. So I present without comment the Ontario Science Table's ICU patient forecast from April 16th versus actual reality. The thing with this is, I'll comment a little bit. 11 days later, 11 days after making these predictions, the predictions they made were 15% off, and the actual was 15% lower. By, I don't know how many days. By May 8th, they were 42% off, and the prediction was made April 16th. So a month later, they're off by 50%. Doug Ford is telling us that the best science is telling him that in order to prevent this, they need to lock down for another month, and then they lock down for 2 weeks. Why would anybody believe anything that anybody says? Why? Why would you believe these people? They've been wrong every single time. Toronto's been locked down since November. Why would anybody believe them? We'll hold the ball for you this time, Charlie Brown, right? Here's a list of some of the great community events canceled in Toronto again this year in 2021. This is what a one-dose summer looks like. This one-dose summer thing, I don't know about this. It sounds manufactured. And the people using it raise my eyebrows. I'm like, seems a little coordinated. Everyone get an email? Okay. Taste of the Middle East, Taste of Lawrence, Honda Indy, Toronto Outdoor Art Fair, Afrofest, Salsa in Toronto, 49th Annual Festival of India, Bloor West Street Festival, Beaches Jazz Festival, OSS Fest, Caribbean Junior Carnival, Scarborough Rib Fest, Caribbean Carnival, King and Queen Competition, Pan Alive, and Grand Parade, Taste of the Danforth, I can't say that one, Food and Drink Festival, Vegandale. I was like, what? Bollywood Film Fair, Waterfront Night Market, Canadian National Exhibition, the CNE's canceled, Mabui, Philippines Festival, sorry I forgot that wrong, Toronto Chinatown Festival, Labor Day Parade. It's all canceled, and it's May 14th. It's all canceled, done. Your summer's over. Okay, there's just a bit more, but I'll head over to Redacted anyway because I'm talking about vaccines and YouTube doesn't like that. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.